We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Just explaining to Russ. Well, I'll start with this. Chris from Como, I should say, still waiting for the leaked text chain discussing Sam's plan to drop bombs in Tim Pool's toilet. And it's upsetting to Emma. She doesn't like this type of talk. But Matt enjoyed it. And I was explaining to...
I liked how yesterday you...
That's a real thing.
When I was explaining why I was sick on Thursday, you were like, nobody wants to hear all that. You've talked about...
I got news for you. People wanted to hear about the Tim Pool thing because...
shit you dropped? Yeah.
I don't have to be so crass about it. I made a movement.
This is why you guys don't get invited places.
I made a movement in his... I made a movement in his bidet, his very, very fancy bidet. And it didn't flush. I broke it. I broke the toilet.
Yep, we've talked.
And then
that's a real thing.
And then during my debate with him, I can't remember at what point, but I felt that it was important for him to know that it was me, and that there was a certain amount of.
That was minute 18 through minute 27, I think it was.
It was an alpha move, without a doubt.
I guess in the animal kingdom, but
I was walking into work listening to the interview live as you were doing it, and it was right when I got to the building that all of a sudden the poop thing happened, and I got through the lost service in the elevator, and then when I got service again, you were still talking about it, and I came in and Emma was just looking so grossed out. Why is he talking about poop?
I didn't remember that.
Yep.
I was like, this is so funny. I was like, why is he doing this?
Like, for me, this would be the kind of thing that would be like, I would keep to myself for the rest of my life. But
I wanted to, and Margot from Mass gets it. Maybe it's a Massachusetts thing. But she wrote alpha disrespect movement. I mean, it really, for me, it was, I wanted to make it clear that I had no respect for Tim
or his territory
or his facilities.
Right. I mean, truly.
Or frankly, his faculties. Like there was nothing. I saw the Tesla truck that he had when I pulled into his compound. I walked through his skateboard park, which ultimately I began to see as like almost a cinematic representation of the man's loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that like, okay, in this environment, you've got this, you've taken all of these people who are working for you and you made them move to a remote part of, fairly remote part of West Virginia and then laid off half of them. And to keep the others happy, you put in a bidet. I wanted to communicate without seeming rude that I had very little respect for everything that was going on.
Mission accomplished.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Totally polite.
Yep. No, I mean, it was, look, things happen. Things happen. But I wanted to make it clear that I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be ashamed about it.
Well, I just can't even.
Yep.
I mean, again, maybe this is just my waspy upbringing, but we don't speak about things such as this. I'm also
Oh my God,
a lady. I don't know if you knew this, but I'm supposed to,
I understand. I understand.
that demands a certain level of respect, I was told by all the alpha males.
That is not the way I was raised.
Yeah.
Right now, as we are
on to Social Security.
Yeah, sorry
Great.
about that. Let's move to Social Security. That's what I like about this show. High, low. That's what we do.
Low, high now.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when they go high, we're still down. We're still low.
In the gutter, literally.
It's not the gutter. It's in the bidet.
Right. It didn't make it to the gutter.
All right. I want to just read this story first before we get on to what's going on there. A couple other points. I just want to actually some brief things. The Republicans in the Senate now are gearing up to vote on the House budget resolution. They're going to try and do this by April. All the same constraints exist. The senators don't want to cut Medicaid, et cetera, et cetera. But they have moved up this timeline because Chuck Schumer was so incredibly weak. Like, Chuck Schumer was so weak that the Republicans were surprised. Never mind all the House members, Democratic House members. The Republicans were surprised. That was my plan all along, to give them so much of what they want that they get thrown off. And they were confused for an hour.
I mean, Mike Johnson outfoxed him. He thought that there was the margins were too slim in the House, that this dirty continuing resolution wouldn't pass. And then he had no plan B.
Pull up, Matt, if you could, from this story. We should have it as a tear sheet. Long waits, waves of calls, web crashes. Social Security is breaking down. That is the headline of a Washington Post story discussing Social Security. The Social Security Administration website crashed 4 times in 10 days this month. Incidentally, it's the month is only 2/3 gone at this point. 3/4. I mean, how many business days have probably taken place this year? That's probably about half of the business days the website has crashed. Blocking millions of retirees and disabled Americans from logging on into their online accounts because the servers were overloaded. In the field, office managers have resorted to answering phones at the front desk as receptionists because so many employees have been pushed out. However, the agency no longer has a system to monitor customers' experience with these services because that office was also eliminated as part of the supposed cost-cutting, I put in the word supposed, efforts led by Elon Musk. And the phones keep ringing and ringing. They are destroying. This is even now that before they have implemented this new rule, which will not allow you to confirm your identity via the phone, forcing people to come into offices that are already incredibly understaffed. And when you have website crashes, that is because you don't have enough people to maintain the server status. This is what their plan is. This is what their plan has been since the beginning. This is why they were talking about DEI, and they never talk about DEI anymore, because that was their wedge to get in. And USAID was the low-hanging fruit, and they just started from there and went everywhere else. Financial services executive, well, we'll get to that in a moment. But here's another story from the day before. Why Doge is struggling to find fraud in Social Security. I think this also was in the Washington Post. You had Doge first going out and talking about Musk's assertion that tens of millions of dead people over 100 years old are receiving Social Security benefits. Within a day or two, Lee Dudek, what would you call him, stooge, who was working in Social Security and decided to join Team Doge, had to come out and say, well, these individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits. Less than 1% of Social Security payments in recent years were determined to be improper, often the result of an accidental oversight or change in benefit status. This is according to a report last year by the agency's Inspector General. Incidentally, that Inspector General was fired.
Yep.
Almost 2 months ago now.
Trump cleaned house for all the inspectors general who are tasked with finding the fraud that they say that Elon Musk
fraud
is
and
now
waste.
Finding. But he's
so that number, 1% of Social Security payments was $9 billion a year. And more than 2/3 of that, $6 billion, probably close to 7, of the mistaken payments were eventually clawed back, which means highly unlikely that it was fraud, more likely that they just got a check in the mail that they shouldn't have had, which incidentally, I think people get money in their bank account that should have been theirs, or they get a check from, I mean, that happens all the time. Another agency audit, which looked only at payments to retired workers, survivors, and people with disabilities, found fraud was listed as the cause behind just 3% of improper benefit payments. Social Security, despite all of the money that flows through it, didn't make a 2024 list by the Government Accountability Office detailing 16 agencies with improper payment rates of at least 10%. Social Security is the fraud rate, even the improper payment rate is incredibly low. Right. The fraud rate is astronomically low. Again, this is an agency that serves tens upon tens of millions of people. And it has a tiny fraud rate. And why is it? Because fraud is never or rarely committed by recipients. There's some. Fraud is usually done by providers. Mm-hmm. That means businesses.
Contractors. That report further found that 80% of all improper payments were due to just 5 government programs, including Medicare and Medicaid, but not Social Security. And is it Medicare or Medicaid recipients who are doing that fraud? No. It is doctors, ambulance companies, medical device providers who are committing the fraud. They're claiming they have patients that they didn't have. They're claiming costs that they didn't have. They're claiming providing materials that they didn't provide. It's not recipients. Social Security is one of among the most scrutinized and audited agencies in government, with frequent probes by its 500-person Office of Inspector General. It used to be that size. It pays outside auditors to examine its book. Congress grills agency officials. Last year, a major focus, you ready for this? A major focus in congressional hearings, led by the Republicans, was not waste or fraud. It was about Social Security being too aggressive in clawing back accidental benefit overpayments. Mm-hmm. I want to repeat this. Social Security has a 1% rate of improper benefits, $9 billion worth. $6 billion of that, a little bit more, is clawed back each year because they were made just accidentally. And last year, a major focus in congressional hearings led by the Republicans was not waste or fraud. It was about Social Security being too aggressive in clawing back those accidental benefit payments.
It's the same reasoning behind their cutting of the IRS agents, is because the enforcement that would that increase funding for the IRS would be to go after rich people who are like scamming the government and not paying their fair share in taxes. It's the same thing with these providers with Social Security. That's what they're concerned about.
There's no providers in the context of Social Security.
Not providers. I mean, sorry, the contractors or the what you were referring to earlier. It's the same thing that happened with Rick Scott with the Medicare.
That's Medicare and Medicaid.
Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Those are the people that are actually ripping off the government.
Incidentally, the IRS is anticipating about $500 billion less in revenues. Something like somewhere around 10% to 15% less in revenues because of all the Doge cuts already. The agency has millions of people in its databases who lack recorded dates of death. the result of an old computer system and events that are decades in the past. That doesn't mean they are getting checks. Social Security auditors in 2023 reported that 98% of those without recorded dates of death were not receiving agency benefits and were known to be deceased. Agency officials said it was costlier and riskier to update the records than to do nothing. In other words, it was more efficient and less wasteful, since those people were not getting benefits, to just do nothing than to actually go in and clean those records up. The degree of scrutiny by Social Security's Inspector General can be intense. One report issued by the office earlier this month found that a partner agency in Mississippi had incorrectly made, are you ready for this? A $14 payment because of a data entry error. In other words, the Inspector General's office was so efficient that it caught a $14 error. Social Security's Inspector General was fired in the first days of the Trump administration. Incidentally, one of the other cuts by DOJ included funding for a University of Wisconsin at Madison study to project to understand how to prevent imposter scams. Government imposter scams, most commonly pretending to be from the Social Security office, resulted in an estimated loss of at least $577 million last year, often by conning seniors into sharing personal data. And then they go in and do this. So it's not recipients who are screwing them over. It is things like, in fact, I did that video from this chair a couple of years ago, 5 years ago. I got a call from a fake Social Security office. And they try and get your Social Security number and this and that. And DOJ literally cut a study to try and figure out how to prevent this. And that is the source of a significant amount of fraud, of the tiny amount of fraud that is in the Social Security system, because these people steal people's information and then they get the check sent to the wrong place. If you go to handsoffsocialsecurity.org, you can see Social Security Works is setting up people to rally at their local Social Security offices, because every single congressional member of Congress needs to be pressured because of what they're doing to Social Security. Hat tip to Spocko. Thank you. Here is the confirmation hearing for Trump's Social Security pick, Frank Bisignano, who basically is a corporate raider, I guess you could call him. He's going in and trying to figure out how to privatize Social Security. This is Senator Ron Wyden.
Our nominee has made a career out of taking over troubled businesses and using what I think is a pretty ominous recipe. Gut the company by firing hundreds or thousands of workers, sell off pieces of the business, and merge with another company. That resume and approach ought to concern Americans if somebody is thinking about applying that pattern to Social Security. As I've been saying for weeks now, this approach is a prelude to privatizing Social Security and handing it over to private equity. Every single member of this committee knows that there are ways to strengthen Social Security. But what Social Security does well year after year is to get the checks out the door to seniors that rely on them on time every single month. I'll close by saying improving Social Security doesn't start with shuttering the offices that handle modernization, anti-fraud activities, and civil rights violations. It doesn't start with indiscriminately firing or buying out thousands of workers. And it doesn't start with restricting customer service over the phone and drawing up plans to close field and regional offices. The Musk-Lutnick-Trump plan for Social Security is to take away earned benefits from seniors, hollow out the agency in preparation to hand it over to private equity, and give the savings over to their billionaire friends. The fact of the matter is Social Security could be fully funded for generations to come if you just cracked down on billionaire tax cheats and eliminated the payroll tax cap for millionaires and billionaires.
He goes on to say, here he is where he's questioning
The Doge guy.
the Doge guy.
If you're confirmed, will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases and stop them from exposing millions of Americans who could be damaged?
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to make something clear about this dynamic. A court ordered Lee Dudek not to allow Doge into these databases. And that is when Dudek started threatening to shut down the entire Social Security system. And then I think probably either administration people or people in the Senate started saying, hey, dude, you can't do that. We got to do this a lot more sneaky. That's too obvious. Which incidentally, that dynamic, why they got to like chip away at it, slow rolling like they're doing to undermine the relationship of Social Security to people, to citizens across the country, is exactly why Chuck Schumer's strategy, and I imaginary air quotes there, is such a failure, because he's providing cover. He's literally providing camouflage to them to destroy Social Security, and to do so in such a way that it is far more stealthy than if Donald Trump supposedly stopped payments, which he wouldn't do. Go ahead.
If you're confirmed, will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases and stop them from exposing millions of Americans who could be damaged?
Sir, I've spent my career protecting PII in the largest institutions. I think it's of the utmost importance for PII to be protected. And yes, I will ensure it's protected.
So will you lock Doge out? It's a very specific yes or no question. Will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases?
I'm going to do whatever is required to protect the information that is private information. So I don't know what lock Doge out means, but there's way more than Doge that can't have access to that information, sir.
I would like that in writing, that you will lock Doge out of the Social Security databases. Will you furnish that in writing?
I don't know what lock Doge out of the Social
Stop
Security.
them. It's got a pretty simple concept. When you lock somebody out, you stop them.
There's lots of databases, but PII will not be exposed.
If you're confirmed,
That sounds like he doesn't want to keep Doge out.
I don't know what you mean, but I know I don't want to affirmatively commit to it right now.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I also cannot agree with trying to figure out what you're talking about. Blind anti-imperialism. If there is only 1% fraud out of trillions of dollars, why didn't the Inspector General ever put a stop to it? Clearly, they were not doing a great job. I can't tell if this is a joke, but first of all, there's not trillions of dollars that are paid out in Social Security annually. I made it clear there wasn't 1% fraud. There were 1% improper payments. How do you know they're improper as opposed to fraud? Because 2/3 of that $9 billion was clawed back. So if you assume the money that all of the money, and this is an assumption, but I will grant it, stipulate it, because you really either are ignorant or being obnoxious about it, and I'm happy to address either. If you assume that 3%, that 1/3, so now we're down to 0.3, is all fraud. The vast majority of that fraud is not from recipients, but from people spoofing other people's Social Security numbers. You would not cut the program that was studying how to stop those. Banks get robbed. Money gets extorted. There's crime everywhere.
Yep.
But to talk about 0.3% of fraud in any type of thing, like your local CVS would beg to have that kind of percentage of loss.
Oh, any private
Beg.
major private entity, like not for nothing, the Pentagon. Like, I mean, what's the percentage of their budget, since they can fail an audit basically every year, that just goes out the window? I mean, I know that's not fraudulent, but it's completely wasted money. Like, the beauty of Social Security is that it's a completely straightforward self-funding mechanism that's easily traceable, and there's always going to be some redundancies and issues when you're dealing with a system this large in a country with well over 300 million people in it. That the fact that that's the rate of whatever fraud or waste is actually fairly miraculous when you compare it to any other institution that would be comparable.
If we could get even double the amount of fraud in Social Security and apply that to every other endeavor in this country, the savings would be astronomical.
Yep.
Astronomical. All right. 154. We will get to some phone calls. Let's see here. Give me a second. Oh, did we plug and unplug that thing?
No.
We will right now. Matt's moving over to the audio device. He's plugged it in. And now we're ready to call in. Ladies and gentlemen, that sound denotes the beginning of our call-in portion of our program. The number is 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920. Jeez. What should we get into here? There's a lot of stuff.
I'm going to check now.
Let's take a quick phone call as you guys decide. Calling from a 786 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling
Hi,
from?
my name's Omar.
Omar from?
Chicago.
Omar from Chicago.
I've been thinking a lot about that crystal ball and Sagar debate last week, where they were talking about the deportations.
Yeah, where she just completely humiliated him, basically.
I mean, there's one question that I wish she asked. I mean, I love Crystal. She did an amazing job, and I know in an interview you can't always be perfect, but I wish she asked Sagar, as a brown person, as a son of immigrants, if it was him on that plane. Like, how would he feel then?
I mean, I think that's a fair question. You know, that's a fair question. You know, I think he might say
He doesn't identify with them.
I don't identify with them. I was born I don't know where he was born, so I really don't know.
Houston, I think.
But
And I mean, some of these guys, we don't know who they are. We don't know what their crimes are. We don't know if they're actually Venezuelans or El Salvadorians or whoever they are. If the government doesn't like you, they can put you in jail. They can put charges on you and say, hey, you're a criminal. We put charges on you.
I mean,
Now you're on a plane and there's nothing you can do.
to be honest, I kind of disagree with you a little bit, just because I think she took the right tactic of making it purely focused on policy. Like, if you make it
Identity grounds, he'd dismissive of that.
he'd be dismissive, and that's kind of what they want, right? You know,
Okay.
that's just my 2 cents, but I hear what you're saying. People,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's
people haven't watched that
Sorry, go
debate. You know, Crystal's one of the best, I think, people or our peers right now working in this field, and it was just a masterclass of kind of talking about the insanity of this Trump deportation, lack of due process.
But Omar, since you brought that up,
Yeah.
let me just update on where that is in the courts, and appreciate the call. As you'll recall, Judge Boasberg, Chief Judge of the U.S. District Court for D.C., ordered a temporary restraining order barring the administration for using the act of deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. On Monday, Justice Department lawyers acknowledged to a federal appeals panel in D.C. First, they go to a panel made up of 3 judges. Then they go to the, if they appeal from there, to the en banc, or sometimes directly to the Supreme Court. On Monday, that migrants who were deemed Venezuelan gang members and targeted for removal under the Alien Enemies Act are entitled to hearings to challenge that designation. Incidentally, they shipped people who were not Venezuelan to El Salvador. And the Salvadorans wouldn't take them because they're like, we're supposed to only be taking Venezuelans. If they're not even Venezuelan, how can we pretend that they're all gang members? On Monday, that migrants who were deemed Venezuelan gang members and targeted for removal under the Alien Enemies Act are entitled to hearings to challenge that designation. All right. But U.S. officials don't have to tell those migrants they've been designated as alien enemies or give them time to request court hearings before they're removed from a country, a government lawyer told the judges. So do you understand that they acknowledged that these people are entitled to hearings to challenge the designation, but they don't have to be told, this is the contention the government is making. They're entitled to the hearings to find out, to challenge their designation, but they also don't have to be told that they've been designated or give them time to request a hearing. So in other words, they have this right, but we can abridge it by not telling them they're being deported under this.
Aren't you supposed to, read people their rights? I've seen some cop shows.
But whether I don't even know if immigrants are due their Miranda rights, but how do you, and they might, but how do you justify these immigrants, if they are immigrants, we're just assuming, we have no way of knowing really, have the right to challenge their designation as potential deportees if they don't know until they're flown out of the country that they are designated in that way. The assertion appeared to flummox at least one member of the 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals as it weighed a lower court's order temporarily, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, I would imagine. Lawyers representing the migrants filed sworn statements from a Nicaraguan man and a Venezuelan woman who had been on the deportation flights but were brought back to the United States the next day, not because of Boasberg's order, but because the government's agreement with Salvadoran prison included only Venezuelan and Salvadoran men. The question before the appellate court on Monday was not whether the Trump administration had defied Boasberg's order, it was whether the judge had overstepped in blocking deportations under the Alien Enemies Act while he considers a more permanent decision. Just give you a sense of what goes on in these situations.
Right.
Millett, this is one of the judges, appointed by Obama, appeared to agree the Venezuelans were entitled to due process to determine whether they were gang members who should be sent to prison, which seems to be fairly obvious. If we had a situation where you could be accused of being a Venezuelan gang member and you had no means in which to argue with that, there is nothing to prevent any of us sitting here. I feel like we have enough of a relationship with the audience. They know we're not Venezuelan.
We are not.
And we're not gang members, despite the fact that I got some, marks here. I don't know, sure.
Except for the Friends gang.
Yeah. He said they were entitled to due process to determine whether they were gang members or who should go to prison. They are disputing and challenging the capacity of the U.S. to release them to Salvadoran jails without any advance notice or due process. Judge Justin Walker, who was appointed by the Trump during his first term, questioned whether D.C. was the right venue for the ACLU and other groups to bring the lawsuit.
Oh, you didn't like the court. Oh, you didn't like the court that you got. Sorry.
The funny part is that maybe they were held in Texas. Now they were held back and forth. So the guy's arguing, well, maybe that's a more appropriate venue at Texas, of course, right? Because he wants to send it down to those freak shows down there. But on one hand, they're not they don't have the right to even know why they're being, scooped up. Never mind contest it. On the other hand, they should know the proper venue that where they're bringing their case.
And there have been a variety of different NGOs and human rights organizations that have done reports on the El Salvador prisons. And essentially, I mean, they are known as the most, notoriously abusive, some of the most notoriously abusive prison systems in the world. And so sending them there is by design, right? Because why else would you be sending supposedly Venezuelan immigrants to a separate country that has a notoriously abusive prison system if it isn't so that they can be abused there without the United States having to have it get its hands dirty? It's
also one of the few places where they will take.
He's a sycophant.
They will take this stuff.
This guy's like a far right kind of crypto bug, much like Malay, down in Argentina. So they basically said, "Hey, you're gonna scratch my back, I'll scratch yours," by abusing these people, including a man who was a member of the LGBTQ community in his 20s, who was determined to be a gang member just because he has a tattoo. And people should read that Time report about how there were grown men crying for their mothers in the El Salvador prisons. I mean, this is one of the gravest civil and human rights abuses in the 21st century that our government has engaged in.
James Darwin reminds us, just want to point out something, the Salvadoran prisons case. One key part of the due process being denied these people is habeas corpus.
Yep.
You might remember that SCOTUS ruled twice that habeas corpus rights cannot be denied. The first was against Lincoln in the Civil War. The second was against George W. Bush in a case concerning enemy combatants in the War on Terror.
Yep.
Seems like if Al-Qaeda fighters get habeas corpus rights, so should these Venezuelans.
Although, what was the status of that case and how it applied to Guantanamo Bay? Because...
Well, Guantanamo Bay is considered, if they're never brought into U.S. territory,
right.
It's a different it's a different question.
But that's what makes this even so alarming, is because the Guantanamo Bay facility, they tried that. They tried to retrofit it to have these immigrants deported there. And I think it was Austin Coker, when he came on the show, he basically said that they've kind of scrapped those and decided to go with the quicker fix in El Salvador. So both of these were designed to reclassify people, including just random men that had tattoos that have no gang affiliations, as terrorists, so they have zero rights, and then taking them off U.S. soil so they have even fewer rights.
It appears that even in Guantanamo Bay, you have habeas corpus rights.
You're supposed to. I mean, the Bush administration obviously detained people there unlawfully for decades, and there are still folks there. But this is just an even further escalation, and another reason why we are in the situation is because of the war on terror and the erosion of fundamental rights in this country. We're still living in that reality. That's how you have to view, I think, Trump's politics and rise to power is it was midwifed by the war on terror.
All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 612 area code.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Ben.
Hey, Ben, where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from Minneapolis. I was hoping to pick your brains on the signal leak. I think it might be a bit more nefarious than what we're being led to believe.
Okay, let's hear your theory.
Well, I essentially want to say that...
Ooh, hold on, pause it for 1 second. I don't know if this is true. Suns Out, Guns Out says apparently Jeffrey Goldberg will release everything after Tulsi's comments. All right, good for him.
Oh, okay.
We'll see. Yeah.
We'll see if that happens.
Yeah,
But
I mean, that was my point, is Gabbard and Ratcliffe basically lied under oath this morning in front of a bunch of senators.
Well, that information's about to come out, and we'll get a sense of what they think is classified. So I'm all for let's drop that classification.
I guess you all have had Gil Duran on, right? And I think maybe watched that Blondie video where they talk about the butterfly revolution and all that.
We had Gil on I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. And
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
the whole thing with the butterfly, whatever revolution is, they've taken all these steps. They're ignoring the courts. They're doing all this stuff. The next step is to implement martial law, essentially, which is kind of likely to happen based off the Insurrection Act being employed with the national emergency order that was signed on Trump's first day. There's a 90-day, deadline, basically, where they have to make that decision. So it's a very, it's conspiratory at this point, but it's very alarming at least. And I guess where I'm going with this, it seems like to me that Vance in this whole exchange has sort of the upper hand in terms of almost having some sort of distance from the Signal chat, that him and Rubio, I believe, had delegates within this chat.
They all had delegates. Not all, but just about everybody had a delegate. And I'm not, it's unclear to me what that means. In other words, they all announce a second. And I don't know if that means that it's a second who's actually typing these words and they're just talking to their primary, or if the second is there to monitor. But they're all there was about at least a half a dozen, according to the Goldberg article, who were announced.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing I find interesting though is just that Trump ultimately didn't have a proclaimed representative like the others did. Unless you consider the alleged Stephen Miller inclusion there.
Yeah.
And he kind of seems to be acting on Trump's accord. But to me, it makes Trump look weak in the sense that he's not in this group making decisions or having someone there making decisions for him. And then
I agree that that's kind of what that's what he wants.
I think he would say, actually, it makes me feel strong because I don't have to do the work.
Right. That's part of what he likes about Elon, though, is that he thinks that he can be president of America, and that Elon is CEO, literally.
I'm like emeritus.
He doesn't want to do work.
Enjoy the office, but not to do the.
He ran to get out of prison. That is it. He's done. He's going to coast. He's golfing, right?
Yeah. And so I think, I guess what I'm getting to is, I don't know. It seems things are lining up for Vance in a way that he's going to try to make some sort of bigger move sooner rather than later, I feel like. Just the way he kind of came back on his words. He's like, oh, well, me and the president discussed my concerns, off the side. We'll never know if that's true or not. But there was just, in that whole text, everyone is incompetent. So I guess I found it was a bad idea for the journalist to say in the title of his report that it was an accident. We don't know that. I mean, it could be on purpose. Mike Waltz, I just looked up, I think, received some donation from Peter Thiel in one of his campaigns, which was a couple grand, so not significant. But there is so much with this technocrat weird society thing going on. It seems so conspiratory, but it just makes
I would say this.
Listen,
I would say this is that there's no real reason to assume that this is was a plot,
a hangout.
Yeah, I don't think that there is. I don't think there's a real reason to assume that. I think in all of these things, it is always wise to entertain that notion for at least don't be closed off to that possibility. But there is no real evidence of this. I can tell you that so often, just incompetence is the reason, and we want to import, on some of these people some higher level of thinking. I have no doubt that they have designed strategically. I have no doubt that that JD Vance has these designs strategically, but as a tactical measure, they didn't know that Goldberg wasn't going to stay on that chat. They didn't, and they discovered him, or I think it's unlikely. And Goldberg certainly is not acting like somebody who is in on it either. So I think it's unlikely, but I also don't think that it's. I don't think he's in on it.
I just think it's
to contemplate.
a poor word of Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Let me go.
It seems.
I'm going to take another phone call, but I appreciate the call.
Thank you so much.
I mean,
Yep.
we initially that was my first thought, was like, I don't buy this. You know, it's like one of those hot mic things where sometimes you're like, this sounds a little bit convenient that they didn't know the mic was on. Let's see here. Got a lot of people on the line. Wow, we got, oh boy. I don't know if I've ever seen this many calls. 41 people on the line.
Wow.
I don't know, pick a number. How about 704? Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Dimitri from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Dimitri from Raleigh, North Carolina. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's on my mind is that I believe we still are tiptoeing around with the Schumers, the Jeffries, all the ones in the Democrat. I believe they are completely complicit with what's going on. They don't want to fight. They're not going to fight. And this is a time for us progressives to really stick it to them. Because it is easy to knock them out the box. We kill two birds with one stone, them and the Republicans. We don't need to be tiptoeing around with it no more. Hakeem Jeffries, he already done said it. The shift is completely, they want to get rid of anybody on the left that's got anything to say and move to the right, to the middle right. That's the end of discussion.
All right. Well,
that's their whole plan.
Listen, I'm on board with that. I certainly, if I could wave a wand, or even if I had to climb a very tall building to wave that wand, I would get rid of Schumer. If the wand only had the power to get rid of one person, I would start with Schumer. But what is what do you suggest? If I agree with you, where we're at, what do you suggest?
I suggest, like the representative yesterday that's going against Pelosi, get more on expand his bill. I didn't know who he was until yesterday. I had heard about somebody, and now I'm looking him up so I
the
can
guy
make a
challenging
Pelosi.
Pelosi?
Who's going against Pelosi? Yeah, we had him on the program the other day. We had him on the program.
Yeah, I didn't know who he was, and I would like for him to get out more. So, because I'm looking him up so I can make donations to his campaigns. Look, we need to get the old guard out, fresh ideas, so we can move forward. Because they're not going to change anything, and that's what I'm looking for. And
I hear you.
I mean, I support AOC, Bernie Sanders, Jasmine Crockett. Us small dollar donations have proved it before that we can make a difference against the billionaire oligarchy. And I do believe.
I mean, I think, like, I'm watching what Bernie and AOC are doing right now, and I hope there are more that join them on their tour, and I hope we see more of this as it builds up to 2026. We'll see. The problem with Schumer is that he's not up for election until 2028. And I can assure you, I have looked that up many, many times, hoping that it would change.
True. But we can still go ahead and start the process now. Because Trump, how long has Trump been campaigning?
Yeah.
Always.
I mean, we
2008.
can find some legitimate candidates, and we can go ahead and get the ball rolling, because they mean us absolutely no good at this point in time. None of them.
I've seen a bunch of folks in New York here. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries has a pretty tough district to win, but people are looking at it now for the first time where they hadn't really sort of written it off as unwinnable prior to this.
And I would agree with Sam in saying that Schumer's the fresher target. Like Jeffries, I have a lot of issues with, but he, I think, got a lot of trust with other Democrats by keeping the caucus together in that continuing resolution fight. I mean, the caucus, like at least the other House Democrats, I don't see them revolting on him anytime soon. Schumer, it's a different story.
Appreciate the call, and certainly agree with the sentiment.
Have a good.
You too.
Yep.
Calling from a 509 area code. Got to be quick. Got to be quick.
Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, how are you? Did they come and lock you up yet? My understanding is the Department of Justice the other day said they're going to start to sanction attorneys who have brought cases that they perceive as frivolous immigration cases, slowing their immigration roll, and that they're going to go back 8 years and look at the records of some of these attorneys. And if they've lost cases, that's going to be prima facie evidence that these cases were frivolous.
Your boy don't lose, buddy. Don't have to worry about that.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as you're going to be around, that's fine.
Good to know.
Two quick things. First of all, I never understood why you got so weird and cagey when the subject of your three-way with John Benjamin got brought up. But then I saw the
I
latest
never had a
episode of White
three-way with
Lotus.
John Benjamin. What?
But then I saw the latest episode of White Lotus, and I feel like I get it now.
All right.
Got
Well,
a
I
deeper
haven't
level.
seen the latest episode of White Lotus, so I
All right, well,
really
no spoilers,
appreciate
but-
the spoiler for everybody that you've just provided for your
One
joke
last
that
thing.
nobody else knew
One
what
last-
was referring to. Nobody else here has read John Benjamin's memoir.
Everyone knows about your three-way. Everyone knows about your three-way. And now, if you watch season 3, watch season 3 of White Lotus and around episode 6.
Dude, what are you doing? What are you doing?
No spoilers. No spoilers. I'm just
You
saying
already
that-
spoiled it. You've already spoiled it.
I promise you he hasn't.
I'm just-
Do you think people can not add? Go ahead.
Okay, let me get on to my next point. This is my last point. I'm gonna make this quick. I feel like this needs to be cleared up, just to help you with. I mean, it seems like you're having trouble understanding something. The word deontology derives from the Greek word for duty and science. So, in contemporary moral philosophy, deontology is one of those kinds of normative theories regarding which choices are morally required, forbidden, or permitted. So, in other words, deontology falls within the domain of moral theories that guide and assess our choices of what we ought to do, in contrast to those that guide and assess what kind of person we are and should be. And so within the domain of moral theories that assess our choices, deontologists, so those that would subscribe to deontological theories of morality, stand in opposition to consequentialists. And so because deontological theories are best understood.
But wait a second. Are you arguing that? Wait, are you arguing that consequentialists are about how we should be, or rather that assess their moral code based upon outcomes?
What I'm saying is that consequentialists hold that choices, acts, and or intentions are not the primary focus of value that consists of status of affairs. Choices are to be derivatively assessed in terms of the states of affairs that they bring about.
That's what I just said. The results.
You are having an emotional breakdown right now.
Consequentialists thus must specify the state of affairs that are intrinsically valuable, often called collectively, quote, the good, end quote.
So I see you found Wikipedia. What's going on? Is this it? How far does this bit go?
This is top of the head. Well, I was waiting for you to hang up on me, actually.
You can't even make an argument anymore, can you?
I just did.
Ah. Much deserved.
Bingo dango. Ronald Reagan is an idiot. Deontology is when Captain America and utilitarian is Thanos.
Duh.
What did Dave Rubin just reference the other day?
What did Dave Rubin just reference the other day? Oh, Interstellar.
Oh, right. Yeah. They can't talk about anything without mentioning a movie.
It's got to be, like a...
But not...
God forbid it's a documentary, right? It's all got to be a fictional movie to explain the world.
Or just like a movie that engages in ideas that isn't either fantasy or science fiction and middle to low brow of that genre as well.
Hey, let's do this number 12 quickly. Should we do this one?
Either of these Shapiro's is good, I think.
All right, let's do the Shapiro one. I also wanted to do the what's that guy from the Pod Save? But we'll do that. But let's do this one first.
Elon or AOC?
There's weird stuff going on. Which one's better?
Let's go Elon first.
Okay. There's weird stuff going on at Daily Wire. I don't know if people have been following this. I haven't been following it too closely, but apparently the co-founder, guy named, and maybe appropriately so, I've seen some of his movies that he's made over there, Jeffrey Boring.
Jeremy.
Jeremy Boring. Jeremy Boring has left under what appears to be some very sort of odd and abrupt circumstances.
Former Daily Wire talent are taking shots at him. Candace Owens, also Brett Cooper.
Interesting.
Which is weird. I mean, those are people who have been jettisoned from the company.
Yeah.
So you might expect that they would have some axes to grind. However, you would also assume that they would have grinded those axes earlier. But maybe after he leaves, they're not as worried about the NDAs that they've signed, and so maybe that's part of it. It's unclear. This is all speculation, but it would be irresponsible not to speculate. Nevertheless, here is Ben Shapiro, seemingly just cool as a cucumber, not worrying about the house burning down around him.
Show that they are very deeply afraid of what Musk is doing. And what is Musk doing at this point? What Musk is doing is firing a lot of people. And he's not actually doing the firing. He's advising the Trump administration whom to
pause
fire.
it for 1 second. Now, Shapiro can't say that Musk is doing the firing because it gets back to all these court cases that have said, wait a second, how can Musk be firing people, bringing people in, hiring people? He's clearly hired people if he's not actually working for the government. He's clearly hired people. And the person that they supposedly say is doing all the hiring and firing, hiring of the Doge people, firing of everybody else in the government, was a woman when she got contacted when they said the administration said she was in charge of Doge.
I'm in Cabo.
Was in Cabo or somewhere in Mexico and took a phone call and was like, I didn't know this was public. So he's got to say this just because he's able to be outraged by the court cases that later say that he did this. Now, did someone draw on this? What is going on? There's like a weird...
I didn't notice that until you said that.
What do you mean?
The mustache.
There's weird stuff going on there, but go ahead.
A little bit dark spot in the...
That's unfortunate.
He's also acting as a sort of public relations shield for the Trump administration because everybody can hate on Musk, but he's an unelected official. So there's nothing for them to really do about it. In reality, if you're mad at Trump, you should be mad at Trump. If you don't like that Musk is doing what he's doing, you should be angry at Trump if you're on the left, not at Musk. Musk is just the messenger. He's the outside consultant who's been called in. If you don't like the firings, that responsibility does not lie directly with Elon Musk. That responsibility lies elsewhere. But for the left, it is indicative of where the left's mindset is.
Pause it for a second.
Shocking.
I can also be mad at Trump and Musk.
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, what is the advice that Shapiro is giving here? He's giving advice to the left. He's just saying like, he's just like being parental. In
It's
a way.
funny because like there is a grain of truth that I think there's certain folks that are responding. Like people are angry at Musk, and I'm not saying the left, but just the general population and giving Trump sort of a break on stuff, which is a problem if Elon is serving as sort of like
heat shield.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me suggest this. Not only should we not be, we should be mad at Trump, but we should be mad at every single Republican,
Right.
and every conservative like you.
Right. That's my concern about the over focus on Musk. Like, just from our perspective, like, there's been, now his polling is just completely cratered. So it could be another way to say, attack Republicans by not saying the word Republican, by saying MAGA instead of Republican,
but that's
saying
not...
Musk instead of Republican. But what's Shapiro's motivation here other than the fact that he wants to suck up to Elon because maybe money's drying up and Elon's got an endless supply?
He's not talking about any of that. He's going to bring this all home to how the left was wrong about the great financial crisis.
Oh, cool.
But for the left, it is indicative of where the left's mindset is. The problem, shockingly, is never the government. It really is an amazing thing. I'm old enough to remember the Occupy Wall Street movement. So back during the recession of 2007, stretching all the way through 2009, during that recession, two sort of groups sprang up. And they were making similar cases from different angles. One was the Tea Party. I was a charter member of the Tea Party didn't actually have a membership card or anything, but basically the Tea Party was about reducing government
However,
spending.
I
The
did,
idea
hold
was-
on for 1 second, I did receive a lot of funding from the Koch brothers. So that's what I'm talking about. First of all, the start of the Tea Party, I think he was in junior high when the Koch brothers were funding him back then, came from Ron Paul in his 2008 primary election. And then it was subsumed by the broader Koch brother inspired movement, and was really launched when a CNBC reporter sat on the ground and basically blamed homeowners for the financial crisis. And what's fascinating is that he's not even going to recognize what was the first sort of cri de coeur, if you will, of the Tea Party, realizing that it came literally from Wall Street, literally from the trading floor of, go ahead.
You didn't actually have a membership card or anything, but basically the Tea Party was about reducing government spending. The idea was that the government's intervention in the economy had led to the real estate recession and general recession in the United States. And so the Tea Party focused its efforts on lobbying the government, on saying the government should cut. The government should restructure itself. The government should get
First
less
of all,
involved
this is
in the
a
markets.
complete fabrication. The Tea Party rose up in response to and let's be clear, it was George Bush who was the president when the Tea Party, sort of like the nascent Tea Party, started. Right. The whole issue was they didn't want the government to bail out homeowners. Yeah. Not that there was government spending prior to that. There was a $700 trillion bailout, $1 billion bailout in the wake of the financial crisis. 2/3 of which were tax cuts. The bailouts that were happening, to the extent that there was any significant bailouts, were going to the banks. And the Tea Party people completely elided that. Yeah. So everything he's saying is not true about the Tea Party.
It's a crazy reading.
It's also not true about the financial crisis. Did I mishear him? And he said that the Tea Party was against basically bailouts causing the financial crisis.
It's the old theory that if it wasn't for the government being involved in the housing mortgage markets, then there wouldn't have been no crisis.
Which is hilarious.
The fake story for them was that it was the Community Reinvestment Act.
That's hilarious.
That opened up ownership opportunities for low-income or middle-income people to buy homes. But the fact of the matter is that there's a reason why they call them loan officers at banks.
Exactly.
They are supposed to have a fiduciary duty to protect the banking system, and they didn't. And they put people into loans, and they fraudulently put people into loans, both committing fraud against the people who are borrowing the money and the people who didn't. And what you ended up getting was a lot of people who were over leveraged. And of course, all of these junk loans were repackaged and then repackaged again and repackaged again into financial instruments, which people invested in. And commercial banks, what used to be considered vanilla banks before government deregulation in the 90s, started, the repeal of Glass-Steagall started to take commercial funds and basically gamble on these derivatives of loans, and nobody knew what was in there, and they were all junk.
That's the government intervention that set us on this course, was the removal of the firewall between commercial banking and risky gambling. But he's pretending that it's this fake story.
Well, poor Lehman Brothers.
Because, the CRA, it was their code word for saying that too many black people got homes. Yeah.
By the way, this fits in quite nicely with his outrage over people, being sympathetic to Luigi Mangione.
Makes sense, because if you're going to lobby somebody, lobby the government. Occupy Wall Street, as the name would suggest, did not occupy Washington, D.C. They occupied Wall Street, which was not answerable to them in any way. And it basically ended up being a bunch of anarchists and fellow travelers who pitched tents, not near houses of government, but near great centers of finance and industry.
Yeah.
Because the private sector had to be
Not
to blame.
industry.
The public sector was never to
Finance.
blame.
Yeah.
Finance.
Are those synonyms? Like finance and
Finance.
industry? What industry is down there?
Finance.
Finance and industry. Because the private sector had to be to blame. The public sector was never to blame. And you can see that in the hatred of Tesla. Tesla has literally nothing to do with what Elon Musk is doing at Doge. Joining us online is
No,
Okay.
you idiot. The reason people are protesting Tesla is because of what we described yesterday, which is this is the best mechanism to put pressure on a billionaire who is unelected ransacking our federal government. It is to make it so that his pocketbook hurts, and as is suspected, it looks like he may have used his stock portfolio in Tesla as a way to buy Twitter and put up the collateral that he needed to purchase Twitter. If that dips below a specific price, his stock price dips, then he may not have the funds, and there may be some issues with his financing of a large social media platform, which he essentially destroyed and made it into a bunch of bots and right-wingers so that he could further a disinformation campaign that got Donald Trump elected so he could keep getting rich. In fact, without the midterms being a little over 2 years or a little under 2 years away, this is the only way in many ways that people can respond is by hitting the pocketbook of Elon Musk.
And I would also add, I want equity for all those loans that we gave and all those subsidies we gave to Tesla. How's that?
Yeah.
Talk about inefficiency. Let's kick back some of that money. I wonder why Shapiro is being so cloying in this.
To the richest man in the world? It's a big mystery.
I'm sorry. But
I mean,
I apologize for being such an idiot.
yeah. That's what they're all there. He's auditioning a little bit. Dance, Ben. Dance for Elon. Dance for the guy that did the Sig Heil.
I don't like
for,
Jeremy Boring.
For
He's been
emphasis and clarity, as AOC said on the day. Yeah, just keep sucking up to that guy. It's just it's the left wingers that want to stop one of the worst crimes committed in modern humanity right now against the Palestinians. They're the anti-Semites, not the guy that Sig-hailed and endorsed the AfD in Germany.
And says Jewish people are doing anti-white racism on Twitter. Remember he said that?
Yeah, I recall
Yeah,
that.
All right. I'm sorry, folks. That is all the time we have for phone calls today. I had grand plans and, of course, always failed. However, we do have a wonderful opportunity for you that I'd like to share. This is coming from the White House spiritual advisor, faith advisor. This is an opportunity. It's number 12 that we want to share with our audience members.
I mean, I want some healing through my screen. I don't know about you.
It's not just healing. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to invest in yourself, ladies and gentlemen.
This is self-care?
It is, in many respects, self-care. We'll give you the website after this. But as Exodus 12:7-15 says, 3 times a year all of your men must appear before the Lord of your God at the place he will choose, the feast of unleavened bread. That's Passover, ladies and gentlemen. The feast of weeks and the feast of tabernacles. No one should appear before the Lord empty-handed.
Interesting.
And let's just tune in and hear what Donald Trump's faith advisor has for all of you.
And I believe that when you honor God on Passover, starting on April 12th at sundown through Good Friday on the 18th and concluding on Easter Sunday, you can receive these 7 supernatural blessings for you and your house. According to Exodus 23, God will assign an angel to you. He'll be an enemy to your enemies. He'll give you prosperity. He'll take sickness away from you. He will give you long life.
Pause
He'll
it.
bring
Now, I
increase
just want to
in
make something
inheritance.
clear, and you're going to find out how you can get a hold of all of these wonderful opportunities. It gets a little complicated when your enemy also subscribes to this. Because
Does it become a bidding war?
Well, it becomes a little bit of a bidding war. I just want to people keep that in mind, because understand at the end, you're going to get an opportunity to make this stuff real. And also know that your enemies are out there. So don't get caught letting your enemies get God on their
Get a wind
side.
of this? Yeah. Act now.
For you and your house, according to Exodus 23, God will assign an angel to you. He'll be an enemy to your enemies. He'll give you prosperity. He'll take sickness away from you. He will give you long life. He'll bring increase in inheritance, and he'll give a special year of blessing. You're not doing this to get something, but you're doing it in honor to God, realizing what you can receive.
For your special Passover offering of $1,000 or more as the Holy Spirit leads, you will also receive the beautiful 10-inch Waterford Crystal Cross. Don't miss your moment to release 7 supernatural blessings and provision into your life.
And I believe that
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. For $1,000, you can get your enemies to be the enemy of God as well.
But it's not like you're buying something. It's an offering.
It's an offering. But here's the thing. We do have this problem where it's possible that your enemy may also see this opportunity and seize upon it.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, how do you supersede their offering?
So you send Paul of White $1,001?
No, that is what you would think. But in this instance, as you know, my last name is Seder, or sometimes pronounced Seder,
Right.
which is the first dinner and actually the second dinner of a Passover.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who are perhaps a little more religious, it also often referred to from the last night of Passover. So if you go to jointhemajorityreport.com after giving $1,000 to this person, and you sign up for a Sam Seder subscription, which is a $1,000 offering a month,
Right.
then God becomes not just the enemy of your enemy, but more of an enemy to your enemy. Then your enemy is able to garner from God to be an enemy towards you.
Okay. I'm a little confused here, but I just trust what you're
You
saying
and I
because you're
both-
saying it with authority.
You need to play
Want our
piano over
enemy.
this.
Yeah.
You and I both want God to be...
To give us money.
No. We both want God to strike down our enemies.
Oh, right. That too.
Okay? And let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're enemies. We're not. I just want to make that clear to everybody. We're not. But you to go pay $1,000, I go pay $1,000. God gets confused. Where do my allegiances lie? Are they with Emma or with Sam? Well, in this instance, if you were to go to jointhemajorityreport.com, sign up for a Sam Seder membership, then God would actually see me as the enemy and not you.
Okay. So that's how you get God to really listen to you.
Yep.
I feel a little bit lighter already. My enemies are taken care of. I mean, there's $2,000 out of my bank account, but at least they're saying it's an investment in my future. Did she?
It's like half a rent check to get your enemies on the wrong side of God. That's a pretty good deal.
It's not a bad deal. Maybe it lasts a lifetime. Did she replace Sam Brownback, or remember?
Oh no, this is a religious advisor. Sam Brownback was actually
the ambassador to God.
faith.
Okay, ambassador to faith, not to God. Gotcha.
Bill Bender says, I just keep hearing Michael's impression of Sam on this pitch. Ideal Paradox, General Strike, down my enemies, April 12th. I suspect that we're probably going to need a little bit more time than 2 weeks lead for a general strike. But pandemic anxiety, please release the DMs about your agreement with Polymarket, how much they pay you every time you play the jank sound drop. Receding hairline fracture. What do you guys think about that clip of Bernie getting mad at people approaching him and asking for his take on the abduction of Mahmoud Khalil?
I didn't see that.
I didn't see that.
Didn't he storm off after the AOC question?
It was, yeah, he was stormed off after Jonathan Karl on ABC asked him what Bernie described as an inside the Beltway question, which I thought was righteous.
But I haven't seen the Mahmoud.
But I haven't seen that. I mean, it sounds like he might be a little cranky because he's doing a lot of traveling.
I would not discount the crankiness in that respect.
He's already known to be a little bit of a curmudgeon,
But
a
I also
lovable
think-
one, but he's in his 80s and he's traveling a bunch.
But I also think from his perspective, he is saying, like, I am staying singularly focused on
Yes.
this which if people recall in 2016, You could not get him. It took 5 months to get him to say anything other than we must get politics money out of politics. And we're talking about the 99%. Like, if you go back and look at, like, he could be asked any question on anything, and that's what his response was. Because he was on, at that time, a messaging campaign. And he had a message, and he knows, like, I am not going to break from that. And I think that's what's going on there. He doesn't want the clip of him to be, I think she should run against Chuck Schumer, because there's only going to be one clip. Yep. And he wants the message to be what he says the message is. That's it. Tony 32, I don't want to give Trump regime any ideas, but the British conservatives under Richie Sunak was going to send immigrants to Rwanda.
I remember that. Yep.
Ithaca Socialist. Urgent. Cornell grad student Mamundo Tal is being targeted by the Trump administration for exercising free speech. His visa was revoked and ICE demanded he turn himself in. Can you share this fundraiser with his legal fees?
Sure.
There's a chuffed from Mamundo Tal.
There was another horrifying incident at Columbia where there is a student who's been a legal permanent resident since she was 7 or 8 years old, was I think like at the top of her class when she graduated as a Columbia student, who's been having to hide from ICE officials in her dorm with like multiple attempts to take her. So this is the Free Speech Administration. I'm just reminding people that this is what they claim they care about.
Yunseo Chung, a 21-year-old Columbia University student, former valedictorian high school, suing Trump administration over efforts to deport her.
Good.
Who dat? Hey, girlies, anyone want to grab drinks and bomb Yemen later? Oops, wrong chat. My bad. Thanks for the sanity. I used to listen to ASMR for relaxation to get a peaceful sleep, but recently I liked the leaked audio of J.D. Vance whining about how Elon is Trump's BFF. He's left out crying in the rain. Sort of think that audio is the authenticity is dubious, as far as we can tell. I've been trying to convince the government about how special I am for years. Still haven't gotten a penny. Phineas Herb. As a matter of the requirement to maintain records covering official acts, the bombing of Yemen was not an official act. As a matter of whether it was within the authority under the War Powers Act to strike Yemen, it was official act and therefore legal. I think I get it. Do we get to stop pretending the War Powers Act means anything now? I mean, Secretary of Defense and VP legit complaining on Signal that the attacks were not in defense of American assets, but European ones. I mean, it's a perfect example of the War Powers Act doesn't mean anything because Congress will not assert its authority here. Right. But yes, I mean, and this has been a problem for a long time. Dragon Rooter, Goldberg was on only in Hegseth Signal contacts because he leaks info for them. If my drug dealer did this, I would dump them. Giuliani did butt dial an NBC reporter in 2019, so there is solid precedent for this. All right, 5 more. Blind anti-imperialism. If there's only 1% fraud out of trillions of... Oh, I already read that. So 5 more. MPG. I would guess Scott B as Scott Baio. I mean, Hegseth was probably drunk when he set the group chat up, so cut him some slack.
I don't know why Scott Bessent needs to be involved in that anyway, but what do I know?
Well, I mean, this is also...
Oh, you need to know because it's going to affect the market.
Trade, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly. I
right,
mean,
but he doesn't need to know who the name of the CIA officer is who's on the group chat. That would not normally be shared with the Treasury Secretary.
I am sure that his clearance is high enough to know who that person is.
I'm sure, but okay. I think, whatever media I was listening to about this was just basically saying it's not really, CIA people like to keep secrets even within the administration that they're a part of. Like, that's not necessarily, I don't know.
I mean, the issue wasn't that that Besant was on that call. The issue was that if this agent wanted to hide from Besant, he shouldn't have been on it.
Well, fair. It's just, point being, they're acting like it's like a fraternity group chat is just really, I think, the lesson.
All right, 4 more. The Baileys. I'm sure Democrats will fumble the ball on this one. Never underestimate the Dems' ability to miss the political moment. I hate it here. Please, someone run me over. Ben's Hitler particles are getting stronger.
Well, yeah. I shaved that. But...
Miss Kitty. But her emails. Indeed. 3 more. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Are we really supporting Jasmine Crockett? Doesn't she take crypto money and vote to give bombs to Israel?
I think I've said this before. I mean, there's a lot of people like you see her being mentioned with AOC. I don't think that our politics are aligned. I don't like that she took crypto. She eventually came around, I think, on the Israel vote, but definitely took pro-Israel money. Not my kind of Democrat, but I do see she has a value where she can go viral. And for now, we're taking all the opposition that we can get. And she does a good job of clowning these Republicans. And I think that that has value in and of itself.
Mr. Melancholy. Did I miss Social Security segment? Did Sam disappear?
Nope, it was the beginning of the fun half.
Bunny Planet. I agree with Emma saying today is the hearing to confirm the new Social Security cabinet head is paying attention to that right now while all focus is on the Defense Department National Security Leak. Can we focus on both? That would be nice. But are the Mark Warner types relieved? They don't have the heat focused on their confirmation hearing? Look over here so you don't have to look over there. I think the strategy is to flood the zone. I think any specific thing that's happening that distracts from something else is,
Honestly, I wasn't even that set in my. It's just something to watch. And, as people who want to move the Democratic Party to the left, this is a good story to hit the Trump administration on, but we should reorient it and talk about it, I think, in a way that's still oligarchy and class focused.
Jonathan Armstead, a week from today is April Fool's Day. I don't mean to spill the beans, but I'm just saying if the show has anything special planned, it would give us a break from all the recent insanity. The problem is that we just don't have the energy in some ways. It used to be a vacation to do that. Yeah. Jester from Jersey. Thank God fascists are incompetent. One of my favorite tidbits about World War II is that Nazi secret messages were easy to decode because they always began with Heil Hitler. And when the only thing you bring is a party loyalty, the party eventually cripples itself.
That's funny. Yeah.
And the final I am of the day. Kylick. Emma. They call them dumps. Massive dumps. Matt,
I can't
Emma,
believe I chose this career.
Great job today. See you tomorrow.